This is the Toplofty Lounge. We're in for a smooth show for you today. Oh yeah, baby. In 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, baby. Yeah, here we go. In 11, 10, 9. Oh yeah, baby. Here we come. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Toplofty Lounge, episode 52, Conversations for the Elevated. Welcome, all my fellow snobs. This week, we're going to talk about, we're doing movie night. Talking about the movie Excalibur, the 1981 medieval swords and sorcery style movie. But before we do that, let me introduce my co-host. He is the sword to my sorcery. It's Cam. Say hello, Cam.
Good evening, everybody, and happy pre-Memorial Day Eve.
Yes, and what else? What else is important about this day, Cam?
This is also the eve of the 1-year anniversary of the Toplofty Lounge.
1 year. Can you believe that?
I can.
Oh, wait, that's supposed to be clapping. What the heck? I don't have the right.
Starting out strong as usual.
Whoops.
How dare you?
This is some bullshit.
Oh, damn it.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away.
Well, we got there's got to be some.
Well, you've gone through the whole gamut of your.
All right. Well. There's got to be some. I have to get the clappy.
Emotional damage.
We'll get the clappies sometime in there. Whatever. All right. So before we get started, Cam, how was your week? Anything?
I did a little bit of travel this week, minor travel. Had a lot of wasted time by dumb stuff, and I refinished a door.
Ooh. Well, with me, it was poker week this week, monthly poker game, and I was up, and then I was down, and I ended off a little bit up, so I was able to squeeze back in and, plus a couple of the bucks.
Great.
So, it's better than losing.
They're Canadian bucks, probably, right? So I mean,
yeah, so they're worth
60% of a real buck. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because it just matters if you're up or down, right? Like if you're up,
sure.
That's good. What else? Oh, I cut the grass finally today. It was, I've got a fair amount of grass. So anyway, this whole week it's been raining most of the week with like little cuts in the rain. So the grass has grown to like halfway up my calves in some places, and you can't cut it when it's wet, so you got to wait. So yesterday was the first day that everything was good to go, that you could cut stuff, and I couldn't do it for yesterday, but I did it today finally. So so there's big giant piles of cut grass in certain areas, and I got to rake them up because it's just too much of it. But but that was my day. But it smells like cut grass out there. It's pretty cool. Finally, we got rid of that, and I can hopefully I can get into that. Before we do that, though, before we go on, I think we should bring our special guest in for the show. Maybe he's got some cool things he did this week too, right? You can talk yeah. All right, Aldous, welcome to the show. You're keen to talk about this movie, I think, right?
Oh, it's a great one, man. I mean, it's John Boorman's a legendary British director. He's got a wonderful filmography, but when it comes to just an awesome movie that you can just sit down and really jive with, you can't go wrong with Excalibur. So it's going to be a good time talking about it.
All right, good. Excellent.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Oh yeah, no problem. We like guests. That means we have to talk less. Lazy. It's one of my main things, right? Lazy and stupid. So that's one of my things taken care of today. Yes, and we were talking about Peter David died. That's unfortunate. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely treasure of a storyteller. And he came from a different era. He came from an era where, books were, there was almost something sacrosanct about books. He's kind of that third generation, that last generation that really looked at mainstream comics in a heartfelt way and less so a monetary way. It was a true art form. And man, as we lose more and more people from that generation, it's just a reminder of the glory that was. And I'm not painting with just a nostalgic brush that the past was grand. All one has to do is go to their local comic store and pick up a new issue for the most part and see how far it has fallen as a medium. So,
Yeah, you got that right.
It's just sad when you see guys and he wasn't just a comic author either. He was a hell of a novelist. Wrote some, I think it was Star Trek or Star Wars stuff. I can't remember which, but yeah, great author all the way around.
Was it Star Trek? Cam, do you remember?
He definitely did Star Trek.
You did some Star Trek episodes or books, right?
Books.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Aldous, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get going? What do you want to?
Sure, man. I'm Aldous. It's a moniker of my own choosing, and it's one that's not meant to be any kind of a secret identity. It's just derived in a world of hard consonants and brass assertions. I host a digital dive bar of sorts called The Gutter, where the content lives in a world that's presented somewhere between panels and pulp. And we talk about comic books, pulp magazines, pulp stories, occasionally a film, but predominantly comics. And, we like to think it's a place where the analysis is pretty sharp, both on story and art. And, man, there's just way too many legacy jokes that are played for entertainment of the few fans we've got. So it's hard to kind of get new people in, but when we do, we always appreciate it. And I don't know, been around for a while. Cam and I have been digital friends for 5-6 years.
Yep.
And just looking forward, always love finding shows that are talking about, number one, something that people feel passionate about. And number two, that have a good sense of humor and don't take anything too goddamn seriously. So,
do you want to? Is that The Gutter? Is that a YouTube show or is it?
Yeah, it's on its own channel called The Gutter. If you look up The Gutter Comics, usually it shows up somewhere. We co-broadcast on a secondary channel that's my friends of Lord Crackhead Comics, LCH Comics, but we're moving over to The Gutter exclusively. And I won't cite the other show that I do because it runs up against your Wednesday show. So we don't want to.
Show doesn't exist. Yes, it doesn't exist. Let's pretend. Actually, if you want to drop that, if you can drop the links in the private. Oh, so Cam can take care of it. All right, or drop the links in the private chat and we'll repost. I don't think we. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. That's about. What else? Am I missing anything? No. I mean, it's. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to. We can jump into the topic, right? I believe we can get going.
Anybody that would be refreshing. Oh, here we go. Here's a link.
Refreshing. All right, drop the link in there. But before we do, we have whenever we do these fantasy related stuff, all the ad people come out. We got to pay some bills first. So let's. We got to pay for the, we do the ad before the show. All right. So just as everyone knows, so this episode is sponsored by Excalibur sword sharpening service. Bring us your daggers, swords, falchions, katanas, knives, sabers, skies, poleaxe, spears, and scimitars, fulfilling all your sharpening needs since the Dark Ages. I believe Excalibur, they used to be centered in California, but I think they've expanded since then. So, yeah. So, hey, thanks to them for sponsoring this show. Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot. And, go to them for all your sword sharpening needs. All right. Okay. Shall we get started? Cam, do you want to do a quick summary and then we'll jump right in? I'm going to sit back a little bit because I don't know this movie as well as I just finished watching it. I don't know it as well. I'll ask some questions and make some comments, but I'll let you guys go at it. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Excalibur, 1981 epic medieval fantasy. And as Aldous has pointed out, really a mythology story of sorts. Directed and written by John Boorman of, lots of movie fame, which we will probably touch on. Let's see, just a bit of data. like I said, 1981. Running time 141 minutes. There was an R and a PG version of this, as I understand it. And I don't think I've ever seen the PG version, but if you've seen the movie, you would understand why. And in short, the story is basically the rise and fall of King Arthur. We could touch on we'll get into the plot a lot more, but that's the basics.
And we saw the link was that the R-rated version that we saw?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Just had a little bit
PG-13
of-
movie. The PG-13 version is essentially the standard syndicated cable version. That if you saw it at any point when it was a constant on like TBS or TNT back in the late '80s through the '90s, that's what you saw.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Where do we want to start? I'm gonna be drinking a little bit for this.
Well, I would be happy to defer to our guest Aldous, who knows far more about this movie than I do. It's for me, it's kind of a nostalgia movie, but I don't consider myself an expert about it. And the way that I came upon this movie was basically because of my interest in things like Dungeons and Dragons. So, which then this movie and the visuals of it and such became burned into my brain. So those things are kind of inseparable for me. But Aldous, you might have more of a film aficionado's view on the
Yeah.
thing.
So where this came from, Borman. If you look at Borman's filmography, he's kind of all over the map. But what you do get a strong sense of is he's very captivated by the concept of story. Just a good story always draws him. And years previous to this, by about 5 years, he did the film Zardoz, which is a very strange Sean Connery vehicle, but it has a great story to it. And really, the story comes down to what's just an Act 3. What he did here was originally the birth pangs of this, if you will, came on the late 60s. And Borman wanted to do an epic show about Merlin. And it never caught on. He couldn't get a studio to greenlight it. But this was born out of that passion and that love. And what you get is like the most Campbellian of all Joseph Campbell's the hero's journey stories ever put to film. It is like game, set, and match following the methodology of how you tell a hero's journey. And that's fine because it works, because Borman's an expert at it. It doesn't come across as cookie cutter pieces that are all assembled. It's a full unique whole that really works. That all being said, it is also like there's just enough camp that makes it work. I think if they took it overly seriously, it wouldn't. And for those of you that have seen it, like a great example of that is this movie has a hell of a cast. There are a ton of actors that are just starting out in their career. Liam Neeson being one of them as Gawain. And like his acting is just this side of camp as Gawain. And that's what this film needs. It needs those aspects where it's just a little corny because all of the mains play it super serious. With arguably maybe the exception being Nicole Williamson as Merlin himself, who kind of overdoes it. And his stage acting really kind of comes out with how he plays with this booming voice. So it's got a little bit of comedic moments, but for the most part, it takes itself very seriously. It takes the story seriously. Patrick Stewart as well. Yes, Patrick Stewart hit when Patrick Stewart as Leota Grace tries to draw the sword for the first time. It is overly comical and he overdoes it. And it's little moments like that really make this film, I think, to so many people endearing because it is this grand tale. It's the story of Arthur, the great king, the Pendragon, the one that saved Britain. Really, probably the most famous of all the British myths. And just an absolute fantastic adaptation of it. Massive historical inaccuracies, both that are just confounding and frustrating from set design positions if you're a historian at all. But from top to bottom, a wonderful film. It's a great beer and pretzels movie and just a good time, man.
All right.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say that wasn't everybody pretty much overdoing it when they were trying to pull the sword out? They all were. They were. Well, I think they were all like, ah.
Yeah, Urians.
Yeah, when Keith Buckley as Urians goes to draw it, it's a little bit more subtle than what you get from Patrick Stewart. It's Patrick Stewart's just overdoing it a little bit, and that's great. That's what makes this thing fun, right?
So Borman did this Zardoz. That's the one with Sean Connery wearing a diaper.
Yes, yes,
that's
it is.
like I've seen pictures of that movie. I'm going, what? He did this. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm like, okay, I guess that's next movie night. We'll have to watch that one. John
well,
Borman.
that's right in the wheelhouse. That's kind of sci-fi.
Jeez. Yeah. All right. Sorry, we were going to say, Cam.
I was gonna say that the thing that sticks with me in this movie is some of the visuals are absolutely amazing in this. Right off the bat, you've got a scene where you've got the okay. So this is before Arthur comes along. This is with Uther and Arthur's father, and whereas he's battling to become king, and with Merlin is basically on his side and assisting him in this, and there's a scene where there's knights up on a ridge. It's a nighttime and they have torches and everything, and it's like, man, just right out of the box, it sets the stage visually for this, and it carries out through. I mean, the cinematography is beautiful in this movie, and like I said, it just burned that image into my brain for even though it's not a fantasy movie necessarily, it has some fantastical elements, but for someone interested in medieval fantasy, D&D kind of stuff, for me as a fairly young kid, this is that image that's playing in my head.
No, I was also struck by the visuals. They're quite good, and they took the time and effort to do that. And I mean, I don't believe there's any. We were talking about this a little bit. There's very little, effects and everything. Everything is pretty much practical, with a few exceptions, which I'm sure you can mention. But yeah, it's pretty much all practical, and I think they did a great job. The combat scenes are. How I believe that actual fighting at the time really happens, with these guys just lumbering at each other and like no skill, just like hack away and try to, do something. So I give them props for that. I thought that was pretty good.
And that's actually one of the biggest misconceptions and one of the most frustrating aspects of this. Plate mail, which everybody wears in this for the most part. The Arthur story, and depending on what origin you want to give it with. I subscribe to the Blacken and Wilson theory that Arthur is an amalgamation of multiple characters following the post-Roman, when the Romans pulled out of Britain. And so you're looking at 5th to early 6th century, or 5th and 6th century is where you're looking at. At that time period, you wouldn't see this kind of mail work. You wouldn't see the kind of swords they use. The weapons are very anachronistic. You wouldn't see the kind of jousting that they do. But for this film, if you're going to use it, okay, great, use it. But that's the other problem is plate mail was designed for fluidity of movement. Yes, it was very constricting for vision, but even then, they'd know how to fight in that style, and there'd be a graceful elegance to how they would fight. And that's really not here. You don't really see that. Everybody is a lumbering tank, and it's kind of frustrating in that regard because there's no finesse to it, and there would be a finesse. European or Western sword fighting was a martial art in and of itself, and there's moves and counter moves. It's not just I'm going to put all my strength behind every blow and beat you down. It's an art. It's a dance.
Yeah,
and that. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, on that note, I put a link in there, which is a channel I recently found, which is all about unscripted modern people, but in medieval plate mail and such fighting. So you could check out that link for some of those.
I watched some of that too, and they just seem to be they're trying, but they seem to be pretty uncoordinated. Maybe I'll have to watch again.
I mean, well, you got to keep in mind. These are duels that you're seeing in that. Well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but they are doing various moves. I mean, watch. They're not just big hammer blow. They are engaged in some strategy. But I'll just, based on what you said about the that it's anachronistic. It is again going to the the perhaps historical origins for Arthur, but the I guess probably one of the most famous sources for this is the 15th century. Was it Le Morte d'Arthur? Um, it's a series of books, I guess. That is set in that time, and that's what I think the major inspiration for the movie is from that era, right?
Yes, no. What this is it's more of the colloquial interpretation of the myth, which is the
Mm-hmm.
classic medieval setting, and all everything that it goes around with that. I do want to say, and I don't want to dwell too much on this because I don't know what everybody's respective faith is. This movie is very heavily Christian in its philosophy, and that is very deeply rooted in the Arthurian myth.
Yeah.
Almost all scholars do agree that Arthur would have carried a shield that had the Virgin Mary on it, and or at the very minimum, his knights carried shields that had the Cairo, signifying their belief in Christ. So again, 5th, 6th century, they were and arguably there also are numerous scholars that say that those myths are just meant to build up the Christian mythos for it fighting the horde of pagans invading post-Roman evacuation. But either way, that is here very heavily, and you see it, the metaphors in this that visually Borman is able to deliver are striking. But before I get into that, Snap, you did say something that it was the footage is very striking for its time period. The morphing sequence of Uther into Cornwall as he's
Right.
riding his horse and his helmet changes and morphs into as he takes on Cornwall's appearance. It's fantastic. Like you'd think it'd be really cheap and cheesy, but it works in that as
Mhm.
he's riding the horse and the whole mantle changes. It's just a beautiful shot.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very cool.
It was well done. I was kind of impressed. Like I said, I hadn't. I'm sure I've seen clips of the movie and that sort of thing, but I've never watched it from beginning to end, so I wasn't really, sure what to expect. But I
Well,
felt they did a great job with, they used very little effects, and that's fine. Where they use them, they did a good job with them for the time, and I appreciate practical effects myself because so much is CGI now and everything. So it's
Oh, for
quite
sure.
good to see all that
Well,
stuff.
when they're sieging, of course, Arthur goes and draws the sword from the stone, and then runs after Merlin, and he's gone for an indeterminate amount of time, dealing with everything that has just been hoisted upon him as he is now the king, the heir to the land. He's not just king of the people. It's really important to understand the connection to the land, the king of the
mhm.
land in this story. And he comes back and he finds that Ledaudegrace's castle is under siege, and the catapults are actually launching rocks, right? Like you see the catapults launch and there's physically something flying off of it. Now, it's
Yeah.
probably a giant foam rock, but it's still something. And
Yeah.
it's flaming, right? So then you cut to the battlements and you see Patrick Stewart standing there and in his full armor regalia, and something hits next to him. Well, when it hits, it sprays fire everywhere. Like it's coated in oil and it's burning. Great scene. Like great to see that physical effect, to your point. Like that is awesome. Same thing,
And
like when they tie some horses up to like an well, what do you would call it, like a
yeah,
scaffolding on the side of the
yeah, yeah.
castle that they're climbing up to besiege it, and they actually rip it down. Like it
Mhm.
actually is, and you've got people on
There's
it
people
as
on
it's
it. Yeah.
falling, so you get some great stunt work. Which, to your point, man, I've watched, and not just citing Marvel movies, but the Marvel movies where it's just digital explosions with CGI people in there, and you don't even think about the humanity anymore because you know it's not a stunt guy. Here it was a stunt guy falling 25 feet. It's like, damn,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
Yeah.
Even the very beginning with Uther, and he's firing rocks at Cornwall's uh, his
His
Cornwall's
castle. Yeah.
castle, and there's a very beginning, a rock hits the wall, and a piece of stone falls off the wall, like
Yep.
a slate
You get the
slab
sense
of
that
it,
there's weight
and it
to
falls
it.
down.
This
Yeah,
world has weight.
and
Yeah.
there was a little bit. I think maybe they fudged this a little bit, but Cornwall's standing and taunting him. He's standing beside one of the battlements, sort of like peeking his head out, and something's hitting to the side there. I think that might not have been true or not. I wasn't sure, but they're trying anyway, right? And he's kind of like he's flinching a little bit, but
Well,
something's hitting the battlement.
to to a broad on your point, but more broadly, I was watching this with someone else. I said who hadn't seen it, and I said, "Well, what do you think? How does this look to you?" And they thought that it looked, I won't say dated, but old. And to me, I'm like, man, this all seems to stand up really well. I don't look at it and say, oh, this was from this particular period. I mean, obviously, it's not modern because of the way that movies are made today, but to me, it holds up exceptionally well.
Oh, for sure. And going back to what I was saying, there's so many great moments here where the camera feasts upon the dialogue of one character to really set the moment. And like one of them is Arthur has united everybody, right? We're well into the film. He's the king. He's been accepted. And he turns, after they've defeated everybody, he turns and asks Merlin, have we defeated the evil? And Merlin responds that good and evil, there is not one without the other. And the camera slyly focuses in on Helen Mirren as Morgana, and she just lightly turns her head and looks at the camera, and then it cuts to the scene. It's
I
just
noticed that.
really, really nice things like that. You've got and then again, too, setting the stage for the character, the hero's journey, the Campbellian moment. You have to have the hero accept, right? So Arthur's a young man. He's Kay's squire, who he assumes is his brother, but he's not, because he was delivered to Sir Ector by Merlin. He draws the sword. He goes off and talks with Merlin. He comes back. He helps defeat the siege, and he gets Urien down in the moat, and he's ready. And he says, yield. He goes, I will not yield to a knight. And he goes, you're right. He pulls him up and hands him Excalibur. Says, you will knight me then. And it's that moment. He's accepted the mantle that's been brought down upon him. And Urien is just overcome. And beautiful acting on the part of Keith Buckley. That he's just overcome with the courage and the bravery of this boy. That he would hand him the implement of kingdom, Excalibur, the most powerful sword, the weapon of all kings since the dawn of man. And he's just humbled by it. And to his honor, he knights Arthur and then pledges his allegiance. It's a fantastic moment.
Yeah, I think that was also, it is. And to me, it was, there's a lot of layers in that scene because, first of all, he didn't expect Arthur to do that. And you can kind of see Urien's struggling with this. It's like, he picks up the sword and it's like, you can almost see him thinking, I could just cut him down right now, so to me, it came across as being like, telling the audience that Arthur's kingship it's not just, oh yeah, I say I'm king, it's like there's some power behind it, that he is the king. And even if you wanted to do that, he's still the king. And then, Urien's like seems to realize that, and then, knights him, and then immediately is like, pledges his allegiance to him and such. And, excellent scene. I mean, if you're a fan of fantasy or, just like you said, heroic journey, I mean, epic scene.
I thought that was the best scene of the movie. I have it written down here. I actually like almost choked up a little bit. The whole he has the courage to give the sword to the guy who's just fighting, and stand there and says, okay, well, I'm not a knight, then you knight me, and have the courage to do that, and the strength of character, and and just that converts Urien's, and he's like, you could see, like I said, like Cam said, he's thinking about striking him down. He brings his sword up, and then it just the fact that he gave so much, he has so much courage, and he's so sure that he should be king, I think that converts him, and he says, yeah, you should be king. And I thought that was an excellent scene.
No, for sure. And I think
couldn't believe
somebody in the chat mentioned it earlier, but the score, Pasenak mentioned it. And absolutely, the score is fantastic. And that's my favorite scene is at the end. And Percival, and we'll talk about the scene with Percival and Arthur, because that's really important. I got a whole little segue I'd like to talk about with regarding the motif of Christianity and how it's used within this. But that end sequence when Arthur's like, our knights, we ride one last time. And they start riding out of the Camelot. And O Fortuna just starts pounding, and you get that, and it's just like, yes. And then you get the epic final battle. And when things are not looking well, out of the mist rides the beast that is now Lancelot, who has been shamed, but he is here to redeem himself. And just it's like an epic 5 minutes of just, again, this brutal fighting that is just like, it just, man, you just stand up and go, yeah, like it is just kick ass.
Yeah, Lancelot turned the tide in that final battle.
Yeah. Okay, before we get in a little further, I want to come up with something that I thought was a little bit of problem, and I'm wondering if you guys agree. I felt at the beginning there seemed to be too much. They would sort of cut to the next scene, and it would be 9 months has passed, and the boy is the son is born, Arthur is born. There was one part at the very beginning where he's like, I like the guy's wife so much. No, you're gonna get rid of all this stuff. And then the next scene, he's besieging the castle. I thought it was a little, maybe they didn't want to maybe it was too long. They had to cut some stuff out of it. But I thought at the beginning it was a little bit choppy that way. I don't know if you agree. I didn't see it so much at the end, but I kind of noticed that at the beginning. I felt. What do you guys think?
Well, the jumps are definitely there, but for me, it works pretty well. And kind of, okay, so let's take the beginning with, Uther's trying to, get the power to become king, and then he gets Excalibur, and it basically says, hey, I mean, obviously they all are aware of Excalibur and its power and everything and what it means. So then they basically come to an agreement. Okay, fine. Yeah, you're the king and this is yours and whatever. And then they have a celebration. Immediately, Uther, scumbag, turns it to, this guy's wife. I got to have her, So
who would make their wife dance for a bunch of horny nights? Like, why would you do that? Right? Like, hey, everybody, I have my wife up.
It was questionable.
Well, to be
questionable
fair,
choice.
Cornwall does say that. He explains why. Because while they have united, it comes to that moment where, Cornwall yields, right? They're at the river, and he says, I yield to you as king, but what do you get? What do I get?
Mm-hmm.
And at first, Uther is not willing to give anything. And then Merlin prompts him, like, he is given, so must you. And he goes, everything from here out is yours, but you will give allegiance to me. And he says, okay, deal. And then they celebrate. But he says, before Igraine goes out to dance, he says, she is the most beautiful woman. And while you are king, she is mine.
Yeah. He taunts him a little bit.
And if you, up to that point, Uther has shown he's a brutal military leader. He's a great fighter, but he's not a king. He lacks any wisdom. He lacks any of the philosophy. He lacks anything of beyond a military commander, and that's why he fails. And so,
hold on. I wanted to ask you about that because I think that's kind of, that's interesting. Like Arthur has to do something to get the sword. He's got to at least pull it out and show that he's worthy. But Uther is, is demanding everything from Merlin. Hey, Merlin, give me the sword. Like, he doesn't even get the sword himself. Merlin goes and gets it for him. He doesn't seem to do anything that's worthy of the sword. And as soon as he gets it, the first thing he does is, pretty questionable. Now I'm going to try to steal the guy I just made a deal with's wife. Like,
well, he's not the hero, right? He's a failure at that, right? I think that shows a great contrast because you see Uther and his failings and what it leads to, and again, you were talking about the cut, and it is very stark. It's like, okay, boom, the thing with her dancing, and then immediately you're back to a battle scene, right? It's like, this is where you're going to end up, and then, but I think that nicely contrasts with Arthur, and like we were saying about the scene with Uriens, and that he has this wisdom that's, you can't explain it really, but you see that he has it, right? And so you see it's okay, this guy does have what it takes to be king. And we see that tested throughout the movie, but I like that contrast. I like that they showed the flaws of Uther so starkly.
I'm kind of surprised that Merlin even gave him the sword, like he's like, you gotta, like, it just seems, but Merlin maybe knows more than the rest of us.
Well, I think, and this is one of the things I love about this is early on, you're presented that Merlin is the authority, right? Like Uther's deferring to him or demanding things from him, like he has ultimate cosmic power, right?
Yeah.
But what you see throughout this is that Merlin is a man, and he is just as fallible as every other character. He makes just as many mistakes as everybody else does. He anoints the wrong king because he anoints Uther, and Uther is not worthy of the sword.
Well, I
When
don't know there's anybody else either, though. Eh? Like, is
Well,
anybody
but
else
when
worthy?
when you don't know because it's just
Yeah.
presented, and I think that's the story, is that the story is Merlin's. Again, the birth of this came from a script of a story that was just based on Merlin. So I think we're jumping into that script probably around Act 2, and he's reworked it to go, okay, we're going to tell Merlin's story, but it's primarily going to be Arthur's story. And so then Arthur draws the sword, right? Merlin makes the deal for the child. He gets the child. 9 years later, Arthur draws the sword. But then when he gives the sword to Uriens, it cuts to Merlin, and Merlin says, "What is this? I did not see this." Like, he can't predict everything. He's not omnipotent. He's
Right.
just a man, and he has visions of the future, but they're just glimpses. And he's trying to piece the puzzles together just as much as all the mortals are around him. He's not unique.
Yeah.
Well, he also has a great demonstration of that where he's, talking about where Arthur, later with Guinevere, and he's like, oh, can you make her love me or whatever? And he's like, I did that once. He's like, never again.
Right.
So it's,
Well, and there's another one too when Arthur comes up, and it's from this scene right here that we've got. And Arthur and his knights come across Lancelot, and Lancelot's defending a bridge. And knights are defeated over and over again. Nobody can get past Lancelot. So Arthur goes forth, and the only way he defeats him is by calling upon the power of the sword to defeat. And Arthur realizes immediately what he's done. And he says, like, I'm a terrible king. I have abused my power. And then the Lady of the Lake delivers Excalibur. But before that, you have, again, another beautiful metaphor moment. Merlin is standing, he's straddling the water, and he's fishing with his hands. And he catches the most beautiful, shimmering salmon out of the water, right? But it slips out of his hands, and even the most powerful man, Merlin, falls back and is embarrassed as he falls into the water, which then is the immediate metaphor for what Arthur's going to do before he fights, right? Because who's got the shimmering armor? Lancelot. Lancelot's the fish. Yes, Arthur was able to catch it, but he was embarrassed. So everything is called upon, and he's trying to speak and let Arthur make his own choices, but at the same time, Merlin's constantly warning him, I think this isn't a good idea, but I don't know. So I'm going to display this, or I'm going to show this. I'm going to try to teach through metaphor. And it doesn't always work. He warns him about Guinevere, and he still goes ahead. And that's perfectly done with the cookie, right? She hands him the cookie. He goes, well, there's choice. And then, and then he turns over, and Arthur's already taken the bite, and he goes, oh, too late. Like, he realizes it. And those are the camp moments that I'm talking about. Those camp moments tie all of these vignettes together, because what this film is really multiple vignettes, to your point, Sci-Fi Snob. And they're tied together with small, very sinuous dialogue or moments that bring you into the next one. And sometimes that really, really works. And to your point, early on, it feels really forced. But once you get into the Arthur narrative, it flows really well. But again, to my point at the beginning with my little monologue, I don't think it matters, because this is one of those films where you grab a couple beers and you sit down and you just enjoy the shit out of it.
Yeah. And to your point, the whole, I noticed these cuts seem to be very and a lot of time passed and stuff. But to be honest, I'm not sure that if we explored them in more detail, we would have gotten anything, right? Like, would I have really gotten anything more out of the fact that, Uther took a couple days before and did this and that, and then brought his guys over and then sieged the castle? I wouldn't have got anything out of that, right? Like,
yeah, I agree. I think in the end it worked the way they did it,
it
with
works,
those cuts. Just a couple notes on a few things Aldous said there about the scene we're seeing with Arthur getting the reforged, I guess, sword after he breaks it, fighting Lancelot, is in regards to the Christian themes is, his pride, and he describes this. He basically repents immediately, and that repentance is showing his wisdom. He got his rage and pride got the better of him, but he also immediately realized that he had done wrong and repented and was forgiven. And as that's shown by the sword being restored and given back to him.
Right, but I do think it's important that when you look at that sequence, it's funny in a way because it's the one break that Borman uses from the standard Campbellian story model, in that Arthur failed, he learned his lesson, but then he repeats the same lesson following Guinevere. And Guinevere's infidelity repeats it again, and he retracts from his position as king and becomes inward and sullen, and sends the men out on the search for the Grail, which we'll save for later. But I think that's important in that we kind of get a duplicate moment twice. We shouldn't have two moments. They work as it's structured, but in a classic Campbellian story, we wouldn't have those two moments. But I think the difference is this one is Arthur realizing it as a man, and then we have to repeat it again as he realizes that he's the king.
Well, yeah, and beyond that, then there's also a moment where you see him as a father. Well, it's getting ahead of things, but there's a very important line there too. And so again, if you were looking for Christian themes in this, you could certainly find them. Because again, the whole idea of this is aside from the hero's journey thing, is that failure and repentance. Failure and repentance. It's not just a one-time thing. It is something, right? Yes, right. And there are those elements of forgiveness in there as well.
Well, do you want to talk about the Christian themes now?
Well,
yeah, I can go through it.
Okay.
So obviously, at a certain point, again, Guinevere cheats. She runs after Lancelot after Lancelot has defended her honor, and they sleep together. Arthur finds them and buries Excalibur, and then becomes sullen and withdrawn. And then the land starts to suffer because the king is suffering. And so then he sends the knights on the search for the Grail, which, yes, is a very heavy-handed Christian emblem. But yes, that's there, but the subtext is much more important. After the Grail is retrieved, and Percival, who has to strip his armor to be reborn in the river, come out as a baptism, is only then is able to get the Grail. He delivers it to Arthur, who drinks from it and says, Percival, I didn't know how empty my soul was until it was filled. And so he takes, the Grail fills Arthur with the Spirit of God. And he defines.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He's accepted God into his life, so to speak.
Right. It's that metaphor that, no matter how bad everything is around you, if you accept redemption is always available. And he accepts it, he takes it into him, and then he is reborn. He is reborn in the service of the Lord. And then that's accentuated on, he goes to Guinevere and forgives her.
Right. And another very important.
Right. And then what has Guinevere done? Guinevere has dedicated her life to the service of God in a nunnery.
Yeah.
And then she makes the line, which I thought was just, it's a brutal line to hear. Like, I couldn't imagine as a husband to hear this, but I loved you as king, sometimes as husband.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty brutal.
Just brutal. And then the king shows his humility. He hangs his head and says, forgive me, my wife. He acknowledges that despite her infidelity, she is still his wife, and he offers her redemption as husband and king. Now he's united. He's one front. And so you get that. And I thought that was all fantastic. And then on top of that, you have the pagan methodology of the tree, kind of the tree of woe, of where all the knights are hanging, where Mordred is, and his embracement of everything that Morgana has brought upon. Morgana's utilization of the power that she steals from Merlin to maintain her youth. An affront to time, an affront to God. That's what everything that Mordred and Morgana represent. They're corrupting the land with their materialism and their focus on the physical. That contrast I thought was really, really beautiful, but very, very well done.
Yeah. Well, one other bit is I don't know if you all noticed, but at the beginning, everyone's wearing their armor's all blackened or dark
Yes.
colors.
Yes. Yep.
And then when the king, when Arthur finally establishes his kingdom, his universal rule, I suppose, then everyone's armor becomes bright silver, which Lancelot started with bright silver, but they
He's
they
the
all
most
have that.
pure. He always.
Right.
Yep.
And then later when things are going bad, you see this mostly with Percival,
Yeah.
is that his armor becomes soiled, as he's on this quest, and like as he, he's failing essentially in the whole quest, and he's burdened by all of these things, and then like you say, he eventually loses the armor, and and is reborn in a sense.
Yeah. He's basically almost naked when he comes to Arthur with the Grail.
Right.
And he is shed. He's been. This is Percival's second time being reborn, because of course Percival's a thief. He's a peasant. He's a commoner, and he goes and agrees to be Lancelot's squire. And then in a moment of desperation, Arthur knights him. And here the squire is showing ultimate courage, because he's willing to go up against Gawain to defend the queen's honor without any armor on. He's just a squire. He's just a lowly squire. He's showing the courage that's in his heart, right? And then Lancelot shows up and he can step down, but that courage still anointed him. He's still knighted. And then where everybody else, where all the other knights fail, his courage, his acceptance of who he is what drives him forward. It's what saves him from the tree. It's what saves him to the point where once he goes into the river, he's able to be reborn.
Percival's kind of the real hero of the story. He's the only one. I mean, he might fail, but he doesn't actually, give up. He's not like he doesn't give in to evil or temptation, right? Like, Lancelot is Lancelot is always the ideal, and he's the perfect. He's supposed to be the ideal and the perfect, but he gives in to temptation. He fails.
Well, and so does Arthur, right? Arthur
does. Everybody does.
Everybody does, other than Percival. Percival's the next generation. It's the permutation quotient. You have Uther, who's the great commander. You have Arthur, who is almost perfect, and then you have the commoner that's the perfect. It's the permutation process. And then who is the one that delivers the sword, Excalibur, back to the Lady in the Lake? Who's the only person that's able to take the most powerful item that unites all kings, and he's able to throw the power away, because he's strong of heart. He has, and as D. Pensac says, it's his true goodness to the core. He was asked by his king to deliver this, to do this, to throw the weapon away, the one thing that can unite the land, that Arthur used to unite the land. And he does it.
He doesn't throw it away, but he doesn't throw it away because he wants it for himself. He comes back and he says, my king, I can't throw this away. This is like really powerful, and you should have, he doesn't covet it for himself, even when he doesn't do what he's told. It's not.
Well, yeah, he's like someone else will need it.
Yeah, we're gonna need this. You're gonna need it. Someone will need it. It's not. He doesn't keep it for himself, so he's still good in that sense. I mean, then he does. The king says, "Yeah, do it," and he does it. So, but yeah.
Well, one other note I want to make before we lost it with the and then when Mordred shows up, his armor's gold, and you had mentioned. Right, exactly. You had mentioned materialism and such.
Good point.
And a couple of points too, because I do want to touch on this, because, man, I loved this movie as a kid. I grew up in the 80s watching this all the time. My parents actually took a VHS tape and just blacked out the part I'm about ready to talk about, which is when Uther demands Merlin give him time with Igraine, who's Cornwall's wife. Merlin agrees, and it takes everything that Merlin has to create this mist, and then to morph Uther into Cornwall so that he can ride into Cornwall's castle and have time with Igraine. And Igraine was portrayed by John Boorman's daughter, and it's a very graphic sequence where they consummate their moment. And I just can't. I've never, ever since I found that out in my late teens, early 20s, I've never been able to wrap my head around the fact that he directed his daughter in a love scene. So, But then later on, I've also learned the lady in the lake was portrayed by his other daughter, and the water temps were like 40 degrees, and he forced his daughter to like hold her breath for over 2 minutes at times just to get the perfect shot in freezing cold water. So, and Borman's only response, if you listen to the director's commentary on the DVD, he's like, "Yeah, Talise can hold her breath really long. It was awesome." Like he's just like, it's all about the shot, not so much my daughter's suffering, which is weird, but hats off to him for being that committed to the art.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What's next?
Well, here we got Neil or Nicole Williamson, who just does a fantastic job as Merlin. And this is, like I said, there's a lot of camp that Williamson kind of delivers with some of his voiceovers and how he projects his voice.
Yeah.
But man, it's such a great role. And he really, the back and forth between Helen Mirren as Morgana and him as Merlin is just fantastic. There's like 3 or 4 sequences where it's just razors are being jabbed back and forth. And they're both just slicing each other up, and it's fantastic. They just eat the scenery.
I was kind of a little surprised about his he plays it really straight, and then sometimes he's a little bit like goofy with the whole Merlin.
Well, Aldous, you mentioned, it says it's camp, right, and everything, but I think you could look at it another way too. It is from the way that the audience is receiving it. But if you think about Merlin and what he is and what he knows, these things are, like you said, he is a man and everything, but he's also kind of above them in understanding and seeing these things. And like you said, when Arthur repeats the same mistake, it's like he's just shaking his head. It's like so. It might be kind of his way of dealing with that, to not just rip his, well, he doesn't have any hair, I suppose, but,
right.
Just not go crazy. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe these idiots are just doing this again and again, And so he's kind of this, acerbic, has this acerbic response to things, which, it does come off as somewhat humorous to us. But I think it works really well. I'm rambling a little bit here, but the way that he kind of goes back and forth between serious and a bit goofy really works.
No, for sure. It gives him that aloof nature where you think like there's a little bit more power to him. But D. Pensack says Williamson and Mirren were a couple. I didn't think they were a couple at some point prior to this. I just thought they hated each other. Like they were in a film and it didn't go well, and they had an antagonistic relationship. Because I think it was Williamson said he was a little hesitant. It might have been Mirren. I know one of them said they were hesitant to do the picture because of it, and they ended up, from what I recall of this from the director's commentary, they walked out of it being great friends. So it kind of mended some fences for them working together. But I do know there was some antagonism, and they actively did not like each other. So
so the Wikipedia says there were personal issues during a production of Macbeth 7 years earlier, but he cast them on purpose, knowing that that tension would come through between the
right. That's a Borman move of knowing the personal relationship of the actors and then just getting it on film, because then you don't even have to work, right? Like they just actively hate each other, so you're going to get that natural antagonism.
Yeah, so we're talking about Borman's just a little addition there. Borman's family. So his son Charlie also portrayed Mordred, the boy Mordred.
The voice, I think, wasn't it just the
voice?
No, the
boy. I think it says here that he portrayed the boy. When Mordred is a little kid and he comes out at first, and then then he's magically sort of transformed into an adult Mordred, but we flash forward. There's a lot of time jumps in this, which is inherent to the requirement of what needs to be done to tell the full story of Arthur as the story requires. So Dave says, when Dave says they were a couple, it says they had personal issues from Macbeth 7 years earlier. It doesn't say they were a couple, but personal.
So they probably hooked up and it didn't go well.
Yeah,
so
it could mean lots of stuff.
A director's job is 90% casting. I agree roughly with that. I think good directors, and I think Borman's a great example of that here. He knows what he needs from each individual character, and he's reaching out. The gentleman that played Arthur in this was a relatively unknown Nigel Terry. And I think it really works that he's an unknown and he's new, because you get everything that you need as a sense of Arthur as a young man. Where that slips is later. You get a very limited range from an older Arthur, when I think you probably needed somebody a little more seasoned to deliver. It doesn't take anything away from the film, but there's some sequences that probably could have used a little bit more experience. And it's not to really slam the film. I mean, I'm really cutting with a thin razor here and really, dicing that garlic really thin to find something to complain about. But I think that would be the only thing.
Now, Nigel Terry, it says Nigel Terry was 35 years old when they started the film. So he was,
mostly a theater actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was, he wasn't like he was, a teenager. So he was a little older, but
I
can get your point there. Yeah.
I was going to say, on that note, by contrast, I think he portrays a young Arthur pretty well, kind of wide-eyed and, just innocent and just kind of blundering. Like when he just goes to get Excalibur and Kay comes up and he's kind of looks at him, amazed. And he's like, someone, I couldn't find your sword or whatever, but here's Excalibur, as if it's nothing, and then, again, his, he gets scared and runs off. And his scenes with Merlin are pretty good after that. And then, again, he kind of is like, okay, yeah, I'm the king and we're going to do this. And, so it's like this, you could see a teenager doing that, where it's just like, completely freaked out by something. And then just like, oh, okay, now we're there, and shifting gears. So for my mind, that's, and I guess I might be agreeing with you, Aldous, is that his stronger performance is when he's younger.
No, for sure. I think Nigel Terry is much better in the first half of the movie rather than the last half of the movie, as far as his acting goes. But I think it's redeemed because you've got people like Nicholas Clay that plays Lancelot, who just he's chewing scenery every time he's in this. Clay is fantastic with his delivery and especially his eyes. When he comes to defend the Queen's honor, his eyes are fantastic. How he's directing his vision and where the camera work is and what Borman's choosing to accentuate. Instead of not so much the lines and what's going on, it's his eyes as he looks at Guinevere and says it and then turns and faces it. There's some really, really, Terry is surrounded by a phenomenal cast. This cast is absolutely amazing. I don't think there's a change that you could make that would make this movie better. It's a great cast. There's so many guys that came up out of this. When you think of like who's in this, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, you've got Liam Neeson, Gabriel Byrne, Syrian Hines as King Lot in it. Fantastic, tiny little scene, but man, just there's power there, and you can see where they're coming from. Helen Mirren was already a goddess in film, but man, she just owns every scene as Morgana in a supporting role, and she could have carried any other role in this. The girl that plays Guinevere does an excellent job. Cherie, what is it, Lunghey?
Yeah,
just fantastic. Paul Jeffrey as Percival does a wonderful job. Corin Redgrave is woefully underused, though, as Cornwall earlier in this. He is such a fantastic actor, and they just don't give him the time that he really should have. But it's great to see him in this. It's just fantastic.
I was surprised to, when, reading this over, and that Nigel Terry was 35 when he's playing a young Arthur. But, assuming he's about, 16, 17 at the time. I was surprised. I'm like, oh, he's really 35. Wow.
Yeah, and sadly, we've lost Nigel Terry in 2015. We lost Nicholas Clay in 2000, very young, 53, and then Nigel Terry passed. I think he was only in his late 60s. So a lot of the people in this we've lost. Nicole Williamson's gone. So it's tragic. A lot of great talent in this that's passed.
A few a few other bits here. One of my favorite scenes also is where when they Kay and Arthur they get to the the tournament on Easter where you see Patrick Stewart. They're kind of having a melee or whatever, and Patrick Stewart wins, and like you said, he goes to get the sword and everything, and then later it's Kay's turn to get into it, and he's that's why Arthur has to go get Excalibur because he left the sword behind, and when Arthur pulls out the sword and Kay comes up. And Kay is, his father comes up and he says, "Did you pull?" Did you ask Kay? He says, "Did you pull Excalibur out of it?" And he's like, "Yes." And he's like, "No." I mean, it's like it was again one of those. It was just I don't know what it was supposed to convey, but I liked it.
To your point, the moment there is he says yes at first, and then he glances to the sword, and then he looks back to his dad and shakes his head and says no.
Yeah,
and it's almost like the sword is compelling him to be honest.
Yeah, and
it's really subtle, but it's a nice touch in that the sword is a king's sword, and a king is an honest man, right? You'd like to think that a king is an honest man. As Americans, we all know that kings are liars and cheats and scum, and so they should all be persecuted and destroyed, and monarchies are evil. But because we're in mythology, we're in that myth making. It's kings are grand. Everything about the king, he's tied to the people and the land again, and that's a general concept theme. He's honest. He's a good man.
Yeah,
and we want to continue that.
Right, and so I'm sorry. Stop. Go ahead.
I was going to say I like the part he goes, I can put it back.
Yeah, and he does, and it goes in. And if you notice, when it goes in,
I'll put it back.
Yeah,
he doesn't know that the guy who pulls the sword out is the king. Like everybody knows that, right? Like it's sort of this.
Well, I was going to say that, and then Kay at that point, it's like immediately he becomes, Arthur's his squire. I mean, he's basically his boss, right? And as well as his younger brother, and then Kay, by the next time we really see, well, okay, so what I was going to talk about is there's this scene where they have this face off basically, where everybody comes over there and they see him actually pull the sword back out again because his father told him to put it back in and then pull it out again, and people witness this, right? So they know it's him, and then they immediately start to have this argument. Urians basically is leading the faction against him. It's like, nah, we're not following this, this bastard, this nobody, and then Patrick Stewart.
That's kind of funny though, because they only found out he was a bastard 2 minutes ago.
Right.
They thought he was he didn't know himself. But anyway.
Right, but the point is, this is the moment where it's like, are we going to go with this guy or not? And Patrick Stewart, it's Leo DeGrance, I can't pronounce it very well. Patrick Stewart, who had just been proven himself in combat. He's a formidable guy, right? And Urians is like, are you with us or against us? And he's just like, against you. I mean, it was like, it's like this pivotal moment where it's like, no, I'm standing with this kid is the king, and I'm standing with him. That was, that might be the moment for me. That's like, that is the most badass moment. But then again, immediately, Arthur runs off at this point. But then when he returns, Kay transforms, and it's like, now Arthur's the king, and I'm following him. And his father Hector does the same thing, and. Again, this is referring to the same thing about what you were mentioning with, the king, being the king means something, here. It's not just a title. It's not just a political office or something. There is something more behind it. Again, divine right kind of thing.
And we see it at the end, after Percival delivers the Grail to Arthur. And he takes the sip, and he has been fulfilled. His soul is reborn, and he is rejuvenated. And they ride forth. As the knights are riding, the land blossoms around them.
Yeah,
right?
That's a great.
So you see that as the king is reborn, as his soul is stirred, so does the land. And it accentuates that the king is not just a man; he is tied to his people and the land. And before that, we see that as Percival's going on his journey, he comes across serfs, that are commoners, that are they're begging for food, they're starving,
Right.
Their children are dying around, and it's the suffering of the land. It contrasts so beautifully that Arthur's spirit, his soul, the king's spirit, the king's soul, is tied to everything. Everything is united. There's a system, and when that system breaks in any level, everything falls apart.
Right.
And that's what Morgana and Mordred are doing. They're corrupting the land for their own for their own power, for their own avarice. What is Morgana's entire journey in this is that she wants more and more power. But then the question becomes, like, where was she corrupted? Was she corrupted when she saw that Merlin abused his power to give Uther what he wanted for just his physical requirement, for his physical desire?
I think so, because that's the only thing she ever mentions. That
isn't it?
It's
anything... interesting, man, that she does that. That's the first thing she says to him is, "Did you how did you do this when you sent Uther to my mother?"
And
he's indicting him.
You stole my brother away. That's the only other thing that she ever mentions. That you took my brother. You took Arthur from, right?
Yep. So did Merlin create the whole problem originally because of his manipulations? Is the sin Merlin's?
Yeah. Well, a couple notes. You mentioned about Merlin being kind of separate or whatever, and they portrayed this a few times in number one, that he doesn't come when he's called necessarily. He's following his own schedule, and then when they have all the knights at the round table, Merlin is kind of like sitting away in the back, and Arthur calls out to him when you were talking about the scene where he's talking about we defeated evil and such. But
Arthur also makes a comment there at that same time about how are you my counsel, or are you my sisters, right? Or Morgana's.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so the one again, you mentioned it several times with the Grail. I wanted to ask you guys. To me, that seemed like the one shift in the storyline that didn't have a lot of support. Where it's basically these things start going, and then Arthur's just like, "We need to find the Grail," and okay, go and do this. It's like there did, and maybe I missed some subtle points in there, but it seemed to me that they didn't really build a foundation for their interaction with the Grail or knowledge of the Grail even, and it was just kind of a snap. Yeah, we got to do that, and things will be fine. Without a lot of explanation.
Right. Well, that goes back to again, this film is a series of vignettes that are tied together via dialogue and campy moments that you kind of laugh, and then the next thing you know, it's the next scene. In that aspect of it, but they're also taking the entirety, because this is, as you mentioned, it's mostly based off of Mallory's Morte d'Arthur, and so we're condensing it down into 2 hours for a film, and we don't really cover why we need to get the Grail, but Excalibur's gone, so the Grail's the next best thing, right? Like, we don't have Excalibur anymore because Arthur decided to leave it by Guinevere after she slept with Lancelot.
Yeah, I just think that if there was some mention of it before, that it was something that they looked to or knew of, that it would have helped.
That comes down to commonality of understanding, I think. Boorman is really relying on the audience to understand the Arthur legend, and he's just telling the story fast. He's not. If you have no understanding of the Arthur myth, this movie probably doesn't work for you. Unless you're like I was, 9 or 10, and you're watching it for the first time, and it's just jaw hit floor awesome.
Yeah,
knights fighting. Yes, I need more of that. But as a film, yes, you're right. Like, why is the MacGuffin changed? And we need some explanation, but they don't. They just say, well, we just need the Grail now.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point that the Arthur and the Grail and all of that was maybe at the time when this came out, just kind of common knowledge to people that knew about, anything about that kind of mythology, and they didn't need an explanation.
You're dealing with a more literate public. I mean, this is only 40 years ago. It's not, that's more of an indictment on our modern society than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but at least when I went through high school, Morte d'Arthur was in the required reading for AP English. So if you took AP English, you read Mort d'Arthur, and that was in the 90s. So there was a sense of literacy that's required, I think, with this film, or at least an understanding of Western mythology, that you have to understand the Arthur myth as it's presented in culture to get this movie.
And see, at the time, when I saw this back in the 80s, that didn't strike me as strange at all, and maybe because I was a bit like you said, it's just like, oh, who cares? This is badass, but it only recently when I watched it, I'm like, that seems strange. Maybe because I'm aware of this lack of literary knowledge, that most people have today.
Now, a lot of people will say this is a sword and sorcery movie. I do not consider this a sword and sorcery movie because there's no sorcery. It's very minimal. The magic, quote unquote, magic that's in it is, and it's really deftly handled by Borman. It's herbalism and like basic magic tricks. And Morgana is kind of challenged as Merlin moves her through. He's like, "What's the root that does this?" Like, "Oh, mandrake. What's that? Oh, it's this." And he's like, "Yes, you know well." And it's herbalism.
Right.
There's nothing to it. He's Borman's laying it out that there is no magic. With that being said, there is a little.
Hold on. Would you really say that with the whole? I mean, he does change the. He changes Uther at the very beginning. That's kind of
right, but that kind of stuff is there's a little bit of it, but it's not like Conan. Conan is, to me, like Conan the Barbarian that's sword and sorcery. This is mythology. I delineate the difference between the two. And I'm probably cutting that garlic really, really thin, a la Paul Sorvino in Goodfellas. But I think there is a little bit of a difference. This is not, to me, a sword and sorcery movie. It's sword for sure. I think it's one of the best sword movies out there. There's tons of better truly historical, or at least close historical movies that are accurate to their time period, but there's nothing that's as captivating as this. This is an epic in that sense.
So I would actually agree with you that this is more of a mythology movie than a sword and sorcery movie.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. This movie is as to sword and sorcery as Clash of the Titans is to sword and sandals. Ben-Hur is a much better sword and sandals movie than Clash of the Titans. This movie is Conan the Barbarian is a much better sword and sorcery movie than this is. If you're looking for like flagship branding, like what is a sword and sandals or a sword and sorcery movie, this is it definitely is associated with that genre because it's 81, so we're right smack dab in the middle of when that's. We got Dragon Slayer and Conan and the Sorcerer King and all those films are coming out. So it's definitely smack dab in the middle of it. It's going to be associated with them, but I don't think it's one.
Yeah. I mean, you can write the magic can be written off by, just some sort of, hallucinogenic mushrooms or something, right? Like,
Well, and
slipped them into Igraine's soup or something,
right?
Yeah, but I mean, it also, like the myth, it's like, oh, the dragon, we have this mist around us, kind of thing. There's a somewhat physical explanation for the things rather than just, I just, pulled this out of nowhere.
So I always felt like, whenever Merlin started talking about the dragon, I thought he was just BSing. Like he's made up this dragon to make himself sound more powerful. Like maybe he does have some magic and he's doing something, but he is, using the dragon to cement his power a little bit and make him appear more, the mist is from the dragon and that kind of thing. So I thought he was, whenever the dragon comes up, he's bullshitting a little bit. But
right. So the classic, like anybody in the chat that's read, it's been a long time since I read Mort d'Arthur. But from what I recall of what Mallory put down, Merlin interprets the dragon as, and I have to go back on this. So if you go back to the history, the Welsh, who were the traditional Britons, they were the last semblance of what was Britain prior to the Roman invasion, other than the Picts in the north, but they weren't British, they were Scottish. The Welsh were the last holdouts, and their standard was a red dragon. And it was like a banner. It was usually like a bronze head that was painted red or dyed red, and then it had like a windsock after it. So as they march into battle, or as the cavalry would charge, they'd have a red standard that was a dragon that would have a head and then a tail flailing behind it. And the reason they did that was the semblance was the dragon was asleep underneath Britain. And so when he's talking about the power of the dragon, he's referencing the mythology of the time and the era. And again, this is my rough understanding of it. It's been a long time since I read any of this, but there's a direct correlation between the land and the dragon, because the dragon sleeps beneath the land. And so that's what he's alluding to. He's drawing power from the land. And that's what the dragon is. The dragon supports and wants the native sons of Britain to win. And so that's where he's drawing his power.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not, it's not a real, I mean, my sense of when I'm watching it is that he's actually, referring to a dragon that exists, perhaps, that he's trying to tell people that, but it's not, it's not clear, right? Your explanation makes better, is
if you take out the moment in the tent where Morgana starts exhausting,
right.
Exhaling smoke, if you take that moment out, the only magic you see is a strange green glow every time Excalibur is drawn.
Yeah.
And that was handled, from what I understand, and again, anybody in the chat's welcome to correct me. From what I understand, that was all done in post with a little bit of animation. Is they did a green glow, and it's really subtle. You don't see it too much. The only time it appears, from what I recall in my last rewatch, which was yesterday, where Excalibur's not present, is you get a little bit of green glow as Percival goes into the water and starts shedding his armor. There's like a little bit of that same magic that's present.
Yeah, I thought his armor turned a little bit. It seemed to turn a little golden or something, and then he shed it. I mean, I wasn't sure if that was just, the water effects or something.
Well, I think leading up to that, his armor was like tarnished and such, and dirty, and it did have kind of a brassy look to it.
Yeah. Yeah, brassy, might be better than golden. I would say that just further on your point, Aldous, was that when, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Morgana and Merlin, he takes her into the cave there, she's like, she wants this, she wants that. And one of the things she says is, show me the dragon. She says that. And he doesn't really, he doesn't show her, which kind of pushes the point that, it's not Merlin never believes that the dragon is real. It's some sort of, like you suggested, maybe the dragon sleeping under Britain, something like that, a metaphor.
Well, it's also a MacGuffin to a large degree. It's both metaphor and MacGuffin at the same time, right? You don't have to explain it; it just gives you an out. I do want to talk about one thing, and I've talked a little bit about Joseph Campbell here, and I'm a firm believer in Joseph Campbell as a tool of storytelling, and I think this movie does it expertly. But this movie is directly responsible for my introduction to the entire Joseph Campbell hero's journey, Hero of a Thousand Faces, because of Joe Bob Briggs on Monster Vision on TNT. In the late 90s, I think it was 97 or 98, he did a show where he was talking about this, and he broke it all down. And he spent every commercial break going over the Campbellian journey. And then halfway through the film, he switched and started talking about Jungian philosophy. And as a young Aldous, it was eye-opening because I had never heard any of this before. I went to my local library. I got Hero of a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. I read through it. And then I proceeded to spend the next 5-6 years reading everything that I could find on Jung. and all of his structures on archetypes and stuff. And it is just this was a doorway to me into storytelling and Western archetypes, and it's done so well. I love this film for that alone, for that wonderful little mirror of what I was able to learn from it.
Oh, on that note, we have to pay a few bills ourselves here. One of the requirements I have to do here is there's a couple of community notes I have to read. It's kind of ads here. Let me see here. Oh, go through these. Okay,
is this part of your community service for early release?
Yeah. No, but there's a couple of let's see. These are ads. I got to pay the bills. Come on. There's a couple of towns here: Athercrest, Glimmerhaven, and Stonewillow. It looks like they're looking for. Each of them are looking for Athercrest. They're looking for someone for adventurers for a large to hunt a large bugbear or something like that. Glimmerhaven, some small cult that needs to be dealt with, some adventurers. Stonewillow, Ember Forge, and Lumen Castle. Oh, they're both said something sort of problems. Adventure with a goblin horde. Maybe those three guys should get together. Let me just. I don't want to read all these. Let me just go down a little bit. Okay. Oh, there's a little bit different one. Marble Haven. There is a wizard named Venifrus Malus. He's looking for young, strong males to participate in a magical study. No skills required. Persons without family preferred. I'm not sure about that one. Also from the same location, they are looking for someone to deal with a horde of mysterious humanoid creatures. I'm not sure about that, but anyway. All right. That's enough of that. Let's get back to. All right, let's go back to. That's enough. Let's go back to the story. What else do we have? You guys wanted to talk about?
I would like to. Well, we've kind of referred to this, but the Aldous, you mentioned it's these vignettes that are connected. I never really thought of it that way, but I think you're spot on there. And the one for me that sticks out is when Percival brings Arthur the Grail and he drinks from it, and then immediately his eyes are open again. He gives a speech and everything, and then he calls for Kay. His brother, who has been loyally standing by him throughout all of this, and then Kay has this great line which I've got highlighted under my name there, as Arthur's sitting there and he turns and he's walking down a hall, so you're seeing him from behind, and he's like calling out. He says, "Guards, knights, squires, prepare for battle," and then it goes into Carmina Burana, and then this whole scene, like you said about where they're where the trees are blooming and flowering and spreading as they're riding out and everything. That is again one of these fantastically memorable, burned into young Cam's mind scenes of like this heroic comeback scene, right? Maybe I don't know if I can name a better one, to be honest with you. I just wanted to note that's such a fantastic scene. I could just watch that again and again.
Well, there's so many of those moments throughout this film when Merlin announces himself. I am Merlin. A dream to some, and then a nightmare to others. And his staff flashes. It's just it. Oh man, he's playing. Borman beautifully plays the motifs of all of these archetypes in such a glorious way, and he does it with such. There's a sense of jovialness. Like, this is just fun. And it's meant to be fun. It's a serious topic. There's really, really deeply rooted meaning to all of the scenes, but you can tell the movie is meant to be fun. And it's weird too, because the brutality upon which it ends. Like, I don't know about you, Cam, or you, Sci-Fi Snob, but one of the scenes that is just cemented in my memory from the first time I watched this when I was 8 or 9 is Mordred impales King Arthur.
Mhm.
And Arthur pulls himself along the spear and then slays Mordred, you know, after pulling himself up the heft of the spear. It's just brutal. Like, you got to,
Yeah.
like, he's impaled and he pulls himself. Like, and it's the way Perry acts it is just so fantastic that, like, every inch of pulling himself along the heft of the spear is painful and struggling as it's brutal, it's glorious. You get a sense of heroicness beyond anything that has been presented in a film, full of it up to that point, that he is dead, he is mortally wounded, yet he will still strike down his own son, his bastard son from his sister.
Yeah,
It's just, that's fantastic.
Go ahead,
and
Ken.
I was gonna say the framing of that scene is also great. And all it's surrounded by bodies. The battlefield's just littered with
it's
dead.
littered. Yes.
And we do see that in other movies too. That kind of, this might be the first where you've seen it, but I mean, usually it's I can't remember which where I've seen it, but it's the villain who's pulling himself trying to get to the hero.
Well, Lord of the Rings or Fellowship of the Ring, where Aragorn stabs Lurtz, and he's coming in for him, and then Aragorn pulls a sword out and beheads him. But
Right.
exact same.
That's where I've
thing.
seen it. I wonder if I've seen it somewhere else as well.
I'm sure there's been others too.
Yeah, but it's usually the other guy. It's not the it's not the hero who's being pulled through. But yeah, I'm gonna disagree a little bit with something. I didn't, we've talked a lot about the camp. I didn't really feel that the camp was so much in the movie. Like, now, perhaps this is my really first time watching this movie, but I didn't, I agree with your points you're making that about, this is kind of campy and the guy chooses scene and stuff, but I didn't really feel the movie was overall that campy. He's a little bit here and there. It seemed much more, a serious movie, and they're, presented in a serious way. And I appreciate that, but we've talked a bit about this camp, but I'm getting quite, I see it a little bit, but not that much.
One scene that always cracked me up is when, I think it's right at the end where they had Stonehenge or something like it, and Arthur's talking to Merlin in his dream form or whatever, right. And then Merlin's like, and he just goes like, and he just like pops out. It's just like he just disappears. It's with no fanfare. It's just like he's there and then he's gone. Vanishes in an instant. That always cracked me up.
I mean, I agree that I think Merlin is the campiest. He's, some of the things he's doing is a little the way he's talking, but I mean, I don't know. I guess I kind of wrote that off a little bit to, it's Merlin being Merlin. Like he's unusual and he's a little bit. So I didn't. I mean, I see the camp, but it didn't really, like, if you would come to me and said, "Hey, this is this movie is campy," I would be like,
no,
yes, a little bit, but it's less camp than, it's not. I wouldn't put it in the category of campy movies,
No, I wouldn't say the movie is, but I do understand where you could say there's a few elements of that in it, but overall the movie is, like Aldous mentioned, it's played very seriously by, the cast. It's their, it's drama for the most part.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
there's
a delineation point that you need to make. It's like in Silent Running, right? 1972 with Bruce Dern. You've got Huey, Dewey, and Louie that are the robots that are camp, right? They're comedic effect. That's not the camp that I'm talking about. It's I guess hamming it for the camera and overacting would be maybe a better phrase to do it. There's a lot of overacting that's done in this. And when I said camp throughout all of the show, that's kind of what I was alluding to, is like when Gawain is obviously drunk when he challenges the Queen's honor after Morgana has been whispering in his ear.
Yeah.
But it's played by Nielsen so over the top beyond anything you'd think. And then at the championship, you get it again. There's a lot of that, and then it goes back to like the I'm a dream, but a nightmare to others. That is what I'm talking about. It definitely comes more from Williamson's portrayal of Merlin, for sure. To your point, than anyone else in this, but it serves as a really nice. You know what it does? You know how like in the 90s and especially in the late 90s from like 95 on they cast like Rob Schneider in every series, like in Judge Dredd, right? We can't have serious, we need to have camp. That's not done here.
Yeah, there's got to be some joke, right?
Right, it's done well, but it's not done over the top. You don't get the point where you're like, "Oh, they're just setting up a joke." It's not that. It's just enough that it makes you kind of chuckle, and then the next scene starts. And in that regard, the sequencing works really, really well. It works in the context of the movie. You don't feel they're setting it up at any point for that comedic joke or that comedic funny moment in a serious film. You always get the sense that it's serious. It's just there's moments of levity that transition in time.
It's also important that there are that it's a fine line that you can do where you can derail. I know there's a particular example that I'm just not remembering right now, but where the jokey bits or whatever can derail the story you're trying to tell. That's not the case with this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I hate that when they're trying to like, oh yeah, here's this. I mean, it's kind of a modern Gen Z type of thing where nothing is serious, nothing matters.
Yeah, so random.
Make these various comments like a lot of modern movies do that. Even in the superhero genre, this is supposed to be serious, and then someone will make some sort of flippant remark, and I'm like, well, if you're not going to take this serious, how are we supposed to watch this? And, believe that the universe is going to end or
this
whatever.
This doesn't
right?
have that. It
doesn't have that at all.
It's a much more erudite. It's a much more learned form of. They understand the audience and they understand where they're at, and they don't go over the top with serious, but we get just enough. And like Dave says, like, light camp, just enough where you're like, okay, that's fun, and you're distracted just momentarily by it, and then boom, you get a scene transition, and now we're into the next sequence.
Like, Dave,
that you've gone too far, man.
Arnie and Mr. Freeze with
Batman
and Robin.
I've agreed with a lot of your takes, but that's
so
terrible.
I see like this, like the camp in that movie, Batman and Robin. I mean, that's campy, but I mean, that was a very campy Batman. But they seem to play it fairly serious, like in that movie, in Batman and Robin. Like they're, like, hey, you're gonna say this, but yeah, he's still, they seem to take it seriously. I appreciate movies
the first thing that comes to my mind is Silent Running, because like I think of like the racing sequence that Bruce Dern has in that with the robots, where he's just having fun, and then you get a transition to a crisis because one of the robots crashes and it's damaged. Like that's the camp I'm talking about. Like it fits the story, and it's something that it's believable that it would happen because of the nature of humanity, but it still works in the context of the story.
Yeah. I appreciate when they, when movies take their, whatever their premise is, even if it's not obviously not realistic or serious, they take it seriously because we're supposed to believe this, we're supposed to get invested in it. We're not, if they don't take it seriously, why should I bother watching their stupid movie? But I don't feel like, I think it's this movie to me was primarily serious about its what they're talking about, the themes and everything, and even if the actors are a little campy once in a while, the movie isn't, right? Like the movie takes everything seriously. It's not like a joke. They're not the Lady of the Lake isn't handing the sword and they're making some Monty Python jokes about a watery tart and all that stuff.
I was making them in my head as I was watching.
No, I was too, but I mean, we all were, but they're making them. So,
right. Can I? We mentioned it a little bit, and the whole sequence with Percival, as he's getting worn down by the whole quest and everything, and then the whole thing where he encounters Mordred, and you find out that a lot of the other knights have fallen to corruption, meaning they've joined with Morgana and Mordred, or then we see the tree, and this is where it gets into the real surreal thing for me. And so again, as a kid watching this, it wasn't a movie that it's like, yeah, this is really awesome, but it was also, and maybe that's why it's so good, it left me feeling kind of queasy at certain points too. It's like, oh, that is really that. It's so horrific, and again, maybe in my imaginative brain of my youth, like again, the tree scene, it's so gruesome. Because again, you see, all of these people hanging. These are all the, the people that you saw at the round table, theoretically, right? And well, you see Gawain actually. Yeah, I think at the beginning and before you see the tree, you see Gawain dead on a horse, being, like strapped to a horse. Being
Percival
carried
makes
away.
the comment as he's riding into it. He sees Gawain coming the other way. He's like, Gawain?
Yeah,
Gawain's dead.
Yeah.
right. And so then the whole thing where you've got the sequence with him literally hanging from the tree, and then what's going on in his head, his as he's dying, basically, being hung, strangled to death, and as you see the spur, cutting away at the, and the way it switches back and forth again, it's just great suspense, and like I said, surreal, and kind of, yeah, I mean, it's to the point. It's not like I felt sick like at a horror movie turns my stomach, but it was just so emotionally. It drew me in so much, to it, that again, it's just one of these, it's hard to describe how this movie does it so well in making these impactful moments, that are so memorable 40 years later.
No, for sure. There's multiple, again, it's a sequence of vignettes, and those vignettes are all extraordinarily powerful. And from the beginning to the middle to the end, they do a really good job. Borman is an expert at hitting those moments that they move you. You are moved, and that is such a credit to him as a director, that this film is still being spoke about in the way it is 40 years later. And while there is a making of, there is no director's cut, and supposedly there's a lot of unused footage that was filmed from like Arthur's Fall, especially after Guinevere and Lancelot have their comeuppance. There's some more action. There's some more action films of the siege. There's some more action shots at the beginning that were cut. Those are all rumors. I've never seen any of them, but I also have never seen the making of, which I think was Dave mentioned in the chat. There is a making of. I've never seen that. Somebody mentioned it earlier, and I'm not sure who it was, but Bob Peake did the one sheet for this, and the one sheet poster is just absolutely fantastic. It encapsulates everything that as an 8, 9, 10-year-old you want to see in a movie. It was one of those where it's just like, holy shit, yes. And I mean, Peake's a fantastic artist, but when you encapsulate that, even though what we're seeing right now, that's what you want to see in a film, man. It's epic, absolutely epic.
Do any of you guys remember seeing the trailer for this movie way back when?
Oh yes, yeah, that was Tuned to O Fortuna, which is the scene when they're riding out at the end, and you got all the action sequences.
Yeah,
spliced together, man. I forget which Bond movie it was, but my exposure to this for the first time was the family rented a Bond movie, and this was a preview on the VHS tape, and it was like, oh my god, Dad, like I want to watch that. That looks amazing. And my dad rented it the next week, and that was the first time I'd ever seen it. And early on, it was one of those, oh, cover your eyes. Like,
yeah.
So a little bit of information. It opened number 1 in the United States during its opening weekend, grossed $34 million almost 35 million in U.S. and Canada. 18th highest grossing film of the year. 72 on Rotten Tomatoes. Ebert called it a wondrous vision and also a mess.
Yes.
He said
I
the film
agree
was
in general with that.
a record of the comings and goings of arbitrary, inconsistent, shadowy figures who are not heroes but simply giants run amok. Still wonderful to look at. End quote. Yeah.
I think that sums up the
Wondrous.
last hour and a half of our walking through the film very, very eruditely. I would agree with Ebert on that. It's a great movie, but man, it is a little bit of a mess, but it's still fantastic. And this is one of those films that I think drips deeply in nostalgia for anybody in their mid to late 30s or 40s. It's if you saw it in the 80s, man, you loved it, especially if you played D&D. Like it was just always referenced. I want to do that scene less like in Excalibur. Man, I can't tell you how many times that came up. It's fantastic.
Yeah, 35 million on 11 million to make it. That's pretty good. It's nothing to sneeze at. So obviously a successful movie.
Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of sound, movie soundtracks, and again, I can never pronounce it. Carmina Burana is, of course, an epic, very epic thing. But the other piece of music used in here, which I'm not an expert on this, but it's Wagner's thing with it's basically the Excalibur theme. That's when you see the sword and everything, it plays that very memorable kind of I don't know what we call it, overture or something, but not to be missed. I guess what I'm saying is the contribution of the score to the overall movie.
Yeah. So it was nominated for photography at the Academy Awards in 82. Didn't win, but nominated, and also the BAFTA, the British Film Awards. Best costume design nominated, didn't win, but that says something about the cinematography and the costume design if they were both nominated in those.
Right, but it did win at Cannes. This was
it won it.
It won an award at Cannes for, I believe, Best Artistic. Borman got the Best Artist award on this.
Yeah, and it got a Saturn Award for Best Costume Design. Not the biggest ones, but just getting nominated in those areas says something about the film.
Yeah, no, that was back when the Saturns meant something too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I think we covered everything that we need to. Anybody, if any chat has any questions about any of the what we're talking about, now's the time. Get it in there. Last chance. And is there anything, any last minute things you guys wanted to talk about the film that we missed? I have one. I think I have one, very minor, but go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we live in a very cynical age, and I think one of the things that I really despise about so many people watching older films is they apply the cynical kaleidoscope of opinion to older films. And something like this, you'll get the women aren't presented. Igraine has no motivation, or she has no persona. Like, just enjoy it for what it is. It's a beautiful film. It's done very well. It tells a compelling story, and it does it in a very fun way. And to get so caught up in trying to find flaw is such a 2025 thing. Like, just stop and fucking enjoy a movie for a change. Enjoy the escapism that it offers. Enjoy the mythology that it tells. And something like this is a perfect example of that. Just enjoy it for what it is, which is two and a little over 2 hours of just pure escapism. It's fun. Have fun. It's okay.
You can immerse yourself in this movie, right?
Yeah, it's just fun, man. There's nothing wrong with just having fun. Not everything needs to be Citizen Kane.
I thought it was a good movie, not just fun. It was good. The themes and everything. I think it's good. Yeah. Now, after Aldous said that, I can't talk about the thing that I was going to talk about now. I was going to say, I just, the very beginning of the film, they have the it's not a crawl, but they've got a couple of, I'm like, what kind of font? Did you see the font they used for that? At the very beginning, when you
Yes, yeah.
I'm like, it's like a cartoony sort of font, and I'm like, this does not fit with the seriousness of the film. Next time, spend the extra whatever $20, get a font that fits with the film.
Well, I guess if I had to throw stones at the Glass House, I am going to say like 84's Conan has a much better intro sequence. Where you're like, they're setting the tone, and you get the picture, that beautiful narration, right? Over the top of Conan sitting on the throne. You get that sense from the dawn. Where is that here? And I think Boorman, that's the one knock I'm going to give it in hindsight, is that intro could have been a little bit more powerful, but that's it, man. Otherwise, I love this movie. This is one of those that I watch maybe not every year, but at least every other year. It's a fun film. I love it. It's fantastic. And my God, man.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna go that far. Like, I mean, I agree with you. They could have had more power to the opening, but just change the font, and it would be less a one with straight lines, not bubbles. That it looks like a cartoon. It should be in a cartoon. That's my own. If you just, you could even just change that. It would be that much more. You'd be like, is this going to be a cartoon? What the heck? But anyway, yeah, that's pretty nitpicky. I was throwing a nitpicky one at the end just to throw everybody off. Yeah. All right. Okay. That's. Did you have anything else, Cam? Did you miss?
No, I perhaps awkwardly threw out all my little bits and bobs that I wanted to talk about.
All right. Oh, thanks for reminding me. This is one of the better episodes. We haven't got to the jokes yet. Okay. Well, okay. Jokes. Okay. Cam, are you ready for the jokes?
Yeah, ready as always, I guess.
All right. Maybe I should. You never like my jokes usually. All right. Why couldn't anyone else pull Excalibur from the stone?
I don't know. Why couldn't anyone else pull Excalibur from the stone?
They didn't have the Arthurization.
Oh,
get it, Arthur, because his name is Arthur, King Arthur.
Yeah.
Oh,
Authorization, Arthur.
What do we have that's better than that one?
That's probably the best one.
Good
I
luck.
have to learn. I need to learn to, not just read them in order and just save the good one for last. All right, let's do 2 more. Hopefully. What's a knight's favorite type of fish?
I don't know. What's a knight's
It's
a knight's favorite type of fish?
It's a swordfish because it's always ready for battle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. All right. Last one. What did the blacksmith say after making a mistake?
I don't know. What did the blacksmith say after making a mistake?
Well, that's a forge gettable moment. Forge, because the blacksmith uses a forge, right? Forgettable, forge gettable. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
All right. That's it. I'm going to save.
Following that, if I may have a moment, here in the States, tomorrow is Memorial Day, and I would like to suggest, albeit not everything up to tell you to celebrate accordingly. If you have time, please, by all means, every Boy Scout troop in every city should be having a moment at every graveyard and cemetery for those who fell in battle to defend freedom for the United States of America. Please, by all means, go and spend 5 to 10 minutes of your time and pay a little bit of respect for those that have fallen.
Good point.
Well said.
At some point. Anything, Aldous, you have anything you want to promote before we end off?
No, next week on my show on the Gutter on Fridays, we will be we'll have Per Berg, who is the artist, along with Mark Millar, the writer Mark Millar for comics, talking about Vatican City issue 2 That'll be on this upcoming Friday. Other than that, I can't talk about my other show because it contracts with yours. So
It's all right. You can, if you want to mention it. Go
not
ahead.
at all, man. No, I don't want to take anything away from you guys.
People,
So,
they can watch it on, afterwards. They don't have to watch it live, right? Or vice versa, right? So if
Well,
you want
Elvis
to,
often
you can.
stops in after his show into our chat.
That's
so
true,
We
that's
appreciate that
true.
for sure.
yeah, you guys are covering Babylon 5, which I mean, Babylon 5. Let me give a shout out for what these guys are doing. They're talking about one of the greatest shows ever. When you talk about serialization of shows and episodic television, Babylon 5 was the first show in America that really ever fully dived in to the arc-based storytelling that has become arguably the standard in miniseries and shows in general.
Mhm.
And it stands as a bulwark of what television can be and should be. And it is an absolute fantastic show to do an analysis on. These guys are doing a great job. I love listening to them. Go make sure you subscribe and check them out because it's fantastic.
He does a better job promoting our show than we do, Cam.
Well,
Jeez.
he's a man of refinement and knowledge. So, but yes, thank you, Elvis, and thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. And,
I
do.
am none of those things. I am a man of nicotine and cheap whiskey. That is all I do. So
those aren't mutually exclusive, right? You can have both.
No, you can do both, of course. So what do we have coming up this week on the Babylon 5 retrospective? We've got we're doing episode 20, the second last episode of season 1, The Quality of Mercy. Next week on this program, we don't have a topic yet, so we're gonna find out what we're gonna be doing, but we will be having a show. Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of the Toplofty Lounge. So this is the day before, so 52 episodes. We've been around for a year. Doesn't seem that long, but yeah, it is. And Cam, do we want to announce the other thing? Jason's laziness. We're going to take advantage of that. Do you want to announce that?
Yeah. Well, for fans of Sci-Fi for Me TV, the Live from the Bunker is typically at 1 o'clock Eastern, mostly daily. And since Jason, the host of the show, is going to be off for the next 2 weeks, we were thinking of sitting in and doing a poor job of mimicking Jason's show, maybe going over some news of the day, general entertainment stuff. We're generally thinking Tuesday and Thursday.
Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to bring back Dead from the Dugout. That's right.
Awesome.
We bring it back only as needed. So Tuesday and Thursday, look forward to Dead from the Dugout at the usual Sci-Fi for Me time of 1 Eastern. Don't know what we're going to talk about. Who knows what's going to happen? It's crazy. But yeah, whatever.
This is probably pretty esoteric, but do either one of you guys, and I get the sense that you're about my same age. Do you remember from the mid to early 90s a show on Sci-Fi called Sci-Fi Buzz?
No, I do not. But during that time, I was not watching a lot of TV for certain reasons. But no, I don't.
So Sci-Fi Buzz was like it was at this time, man. Like it was hard to find because there's no internet, right? It's 94, 95. There's like AOL and Prodigy, but unless you're on certain message boards, you're not going to get it. It was fantastic. It was a show that told you like about what movies were coming out, what books were coming out, what comics were coming out, and it was like the nerdgasm of 1 hour. And then at the end, you got like 15 to 20 minutes of Harlan Ellison in his most unrefined, just ranting. And it was a gem of a television show. If you go online on YouTube, you can find almost all of them. There are several of the Harlan Ellison moments that you're never going to see again because of some of the stuff that he said. But they're fantastic. Check it out. You can't go wrong listening to Harlan.
It was called again
Sci-Fi Buzz. If you YouTube search for like Sci-Fi Buzz Harlan Ellison, you'll get the clips. And I think there was over 200 episodes, and like 180 of them are available. But they're absolutely great, man. And you can't go wrong listening to Ellison at any time because Harlan Ellison is American sci-fi.
Yeah, I
And
can
there's-
imagine what he'd be saying in some of those episodes. I'll have to check them out. Sorry, go ahead.
That's it, man. That's all I had. So I just appreciate coming on, and thank you guys so much. You guys are doing glorious work over here, talking about some of the glory of sci-fi and fantasy.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you coming by. Good night, everybody. Cam, do you have anything?
Just real quick, Green Girl mentioned Covington Cross, which it was a TV show in like 1990 or something that starred Nigel Terry and I'm forgetting her name right now, but Guinevere as husband and wife in a medieval setting. So it's kind of
Really?
hilarious. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Short-lived. It was like a teen drama, but they were like the parents, so it's kind of funny.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of that one. All right. Well, other than that, that's it for the show. Everybody, we'll see you on Wednesday and next week, hopefully. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.